This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 82. Look for negative feedback. Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action, to get started in the right direction, or build a better real estate agent business if you're already in the business, I've created a free jumpstart course for you over at freeagentgift.com. freeagentgift.com. Get over there, get started, headed in the right strategic direction. All right. In this episode, I want to cover looking for negative feedback. What? You're supposed to be this positive guy. Why are you talking about looking for negative feedback? Because it's really important if you're trying to build a better business to look for it. Here's why. First point. One of my favorite authors from back in the day, Maxwell Maltz, in his guided missile theory. This guy was a plastic surgeon near the turn of the century in New York City. So think about that. That's quite some time ago. And this guy really was affected by a lot of the early modern thinkers when it came to success, like Napoleon Hill was a contemporary during that time and a little bit older than him. So Maltz would have been subjected to all this theory about success. And he was very much involved in trying to make people look different to build what he really started to coin that term self-image, or at least leaned in on it, and gave it real meaning as he talked about us being able to see the world through this self-image. So what he noticed is that when he would do plastic surgery on somebody, all of a sudden they might see the world completely differently simply because they saw themselves differently. And that's pretty fascinating. So he got into all of this theory about how that affects us in general. And in his book, the Psycho-Cybernetics, I was going to say the new Psycho-Cybernetics, because that's the version I like, because my mentor's marketing mentor, Dan Kennedy, bought the rights to this book, rewrote it and updated a little bit. He didn't get rid of the base of the work. He just updated it a bit. And he used it to overcome a stutter to become a wildly successful marketer and platform speaker, which stunned me. I mean, I just thought this was fascinating stuff, and how it related to business, because business people were using it. Professional football teams, the Green Bay Packers, were known to have a copy of this. Vince Lombardi was giving it out to all his players, and if you know anything about football, his teams were wildly successful. So it requires us to lean in on this and say, what is this really all about? And what do you mean by guided missile theory? Well, you see, cybernetics is a fancy name for steering system. It comes from the Greek steering system. It's loosely translated, but that's what it means. So Maltz's theory was you could use the mind to steer yourself in certain directions, especially via the self-image. So how does that relate to small business? Well, think about it. If you're a small business person, you are the business. You're the majority of the business. The way you see the world, the way you see your business in that world is everything. So this whole concept of guided missile was really, I think it's really a self-accountability mechanism too. In other words, I have to look in the mirror first and say, well, how do I see myself? Do I see myself as a successful business person in a general way? Do I believe that I could be a successful small business person? And in this case, a real estate agent, agency, broker, owner, team owner, whatever I want to be. Do I even see it? Or do I see that it's an impossibility because of the way things happened to me in the past? I know it sounds all psychological, because it is. That's why he throws in psycho in front of it, right? The psychological piece of steering yourself in a better direction to become a greater success in real estate. Pretty simple. But how? There's a lot of this theory out there in all this self-improvement world, and everybody gets everybody pumped up, and we talk about motivation, but very few people talk about how. And I think Maltz really gets into that, and Kennedy takes it even a little bit further. I think Kennedy had a lot to do with the missile theory as well, taking it a little bit further. And really what it means is, look, think about what happens. You set this goal. First of all, it takes a positive self-image to just set a positive goal in real estate. But let's suffice to say today, I can help you get over that. Just put a number down, define what the success looks like, write it down, and then you can't take it back because there it is in writing. So you have this goal out there. The same way a guided missile has its target, right? Just sitting out there somewhere, and you need to get there. Now, guided missile theory is wildly sophisticated these days, where can you fathom that you could pick a place hundreds and hundreds of miles away, and that this piece of machinery with nobody on board arrives almost exactly at the coordinates where it starts? But the question is, does it go in a straight line? And the answer is, of course not. There are all sorts of outside factors that weigh in on this journey from the starting point to the achievement of the goal. Whether it's the wind blowing, the rain, the temperature, all these things that affect this missile blow it off course constantly. So if you were to truly track the pathway of a guided missile, it's not a straight line at all. In fact, it is a series of zigzags from the very minute it takes off to the very minute it lands. But yet it still lands on the goal. Think about that. It still lands on the very precise goal that it targeted. So why is it so dang hard for us as real estate agents to set, for example, even a simple gross commission goal that's reasonable based on the fact that it gets achieved in our business, but yet we can't get there? Well, my friends, it's because we get in the way. You see, we're having trouble, number one, accepting what goes wrong, and number two, quickly adjusting. See, in Maltz's world, the guided missile is a dummy. A smart one, but a dummy. It doesn't have the time to think. It just says, looks like I'm off course. Correct. Oh, I'm off course again. Correct. So it's very matter of fact the way that this mechanism works. He calls it the auto success mechanism, and he says, hey, you can steer yourself just like a guided missile and still continue to get to the goal. So you see, it's actually negative feedback that the missile is seeking constantly. And the mechanism is telling it, nope, off course. That's a negative. Nope, off course, off course, off course. So constantly, it's relying on negative feedback so it can get to the goal in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. Sound familiar when you're business, right? Lots of promises out there. Hey, I'll get you there in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. How? Well, we employ the guided missile theory that when we list your property and something goes off a little bit, we'll correct it as quickly as possible. Hey, what a novel idea. The truth of how things work. So whether it's our business or we're talking to a seller like that or a buyer like that, when they're freaking out, don't worry, we'll just course correct. An agent comes on your team, don't worry, we'll course correct. Pretty simple, huh? Pretty cool, I think. So the next point is, when you're getting this negative feedback, which I said in this case, measure your critiques against your system, not your emotions. See, here is the challenge. When we get negative feedback, the difference between us as real estate agents and the guided missile is we have feelings, and they get all hurt and busted up when we get negative feedback. For some reason, we are just always hanging on this concept that we're supposed to get everything so right from the very start. It's unrealistic. But see, the brain inside the guided missile has no emotion. It's very black and white. So we have to deal with this thing called emotion. So how do you deal with that? Again, this is a very how-to. I'm going to be very specific in this podcast so you can put some how-to stuff to work. I don't like theory either. It drives me batty. I need to walk out the door, and in order to control my ADD, I need to know how to do something. Can't get lost in all this weird theory. I need a result. I want a result. So when that negative feedback comes in, I think the idea of this self-image is to keep building up your self-image, your self-esteem, to feel strong and understand that it is the best business people who are able to be less emotional, not completely unemotional, but less emotional when feedback comes in the context of business. Now, that's a skill that I believe you can practice. You know, this whole concept of expertise being built with these neural pathways, we're building this highway, superhighway that's protected. So the more and more and more that you can understand you're getting negative business feedback, and not personal, you begin to really protect that reactionary system, that neural pathway to react less emotionally. I'm not going to say unemotionally because it's hard to do, but let's just at least move less than we are now. Some people that are completely emotional, I've been there plenty of times, we can't figure out why we can't get forward because we get that negative feedback and we go plummeting into the water, whereas the guided missile course corrects and keeps going. So you want to measure these critiques against the system, he said. You know what I espouse here as a foundational belief system for small business and real estate specifically. You must continue to figure out the truth of the organization of how things work from A to Z in business. Now, that's a lifelong endeavor because there's always micro tweaks and micro understandings that you can always make, but you have to get the big rocks in the jar. If it's marketing first, then it's marketing first. If it's conversion second, then it's conversion second. You follow where I'm going? There's just some immutable, unbendable, inalienable rights that this business has, right, to it, and it can't be broken. Like, you think of anything you can't break these laws of behavior, of the way the business works. So when you get a critique, ask yourself in what context that critique is coming. Is this in the critique of a seller calls you up and says, what do you send me this crappy, thing in the mail for? This is obnoxious. This isn't right. Well, that's critique. You tried some aggressive marketing message to provoke thought or whatever it was, and it keeps coming back several times over and over that, this isn't good. Don't take it emotionally. Just say, geez, thanks for the feedback. What would you suggest I do differently? And I'm going to talk about this. You don't just take everybody's opinion. You do a little calculation first, but you have to get that critique. You have to hear it, and it's really hard. I was just talking to one of my coaching clients this weekend about this because something came up in the management of their business. I've coached them for over 10 years, and we're at a very pivotal moment of expansion with people, and we got some critique. Got some negative feedback from somebody who's leaving the team. And I wanted to consider it. So I picked up the phone, had a conversation, and said, look, please just don't go right into defensive mode. I know there's two sides to a story, but let's together, consultant and client, let's look at this and think through it. What can we learn from it? So we did. We leaned in. It was hard. Immediately she went back and started defending. I said, stop. I got it. I got you. I got it. Let's just try to get to this. I'm curious myself about what we can learn here. So it took us a few minutes to bring the emotions down. And she started bringing this up, and that's actually what inspired this podcast. We went back and said, oh my gosh, it's that whole snapback theory where you snap back. In Maltz's whole world, when he talks about this, you snap back to this lesser, more emotional version of yourself, and you're not doing things systematically. You're just trying to cherry pick things. And that was the revelation here, is that the critique led us back to the system. And I said, it's a he said, she said, so who cares about that? But let's go through the system and let's measure the critique against that. Did you do this first? Then the next step? Then the next step? And clearly in there, we could see there was some confusion, or we were lost and we didn't quite understand what had been done. So now we have to go back and do some research. Did we follow the system that we have found proven to work most of the time? And the answer is, don't know. Wonderful then. Embrace that critique and let's go study it a little bit more. See, we're already beyond the emotional hurt that we get when somebody says we're X, Y, or Z, or we didn't do, A, B, or C, whatever it is. We got beyond that. We fought for it together, and I was getting emotional for her and then trying to protect her because this is where I wanted to take her. And so, we recognized both of our emotions. And I recognize mine thanks to her critique and say, well, be careful because you said this thing in front of this person and that triggered some of this other stuff. And I know it sounds weird and esoteric. I'm just trying to protect the conversation and not harm people that are not privy to this conversation here where they can back up what they said or didn't say. The point is this. It's the system. The system is where inside your guided missile of a business, the truth lies. And we found it, and now we're working on it, and we're trying to improve it, right? In fact, I asked her, go out there and have a conversation with this person that gave you the critique yourself because you weren't privy to it. Lean in. Lean in when the dog bites. Now that you have your emotions under control, go looking for it. Do a lot of listening. painful for me to even give that advice or to do it because it hurts. We want to get it right. But she did the right thing, and she's off trying to get the answer, and then we'll get back together. But here's the next point. Just because you get some negative critique, I'm also not suggesting that you just say, oh, here I am, I'm wrong again. I wouldn't do that. I would seek out second and third opinions before changing anything. I would really try to go into some vigorous debate and thought. I would write things down. I would get it out of my head. I would put pen to paper and organize these thoughts against the system. If I were to do this again, what would I do differently? Zero-based thinking, right? If I go back to the beginning, would I have done something differently here? Is my communication with my people impeccable? Did I set them up for success? Did I hire the right person for the right job? All of these things are business discussions that become legitimate, and they can only be provoked by critique or something going wrong, all also known as negative feedback, just like the missile gets all the time. So again, the benefit of our mastermind, you should see us on Thursdays. That's the time where we really mastermind, or we think about a subject like this and we beat it around. And this past Thursday, man, it was like I'm sweating at the end of each Thursday call because I'm trying to carry us through the emotion into the logic. And it's tough because you have a whole bunch of people getting emotional, defending things. We get all fired up about Zillow and Redfin did this. And how come I can't index an SEO like this? And why do they get to do that? That was one of our discussions over the last month, and everybody's sweating and everybody's there. And we just say, okay, look, let's just slow it down. Like any other business, big or small, what can we do better in a systematic way? Because ultimately the consumer is more interested in our own professionalism. They don't care what we emotionally feel about what's out there. Can we get them to their goal? Think about that. Guided missile. How about when the seller or the buyer becomes the missile? Can we be the guidance system? Can we be the thing that gets invited to be onboarded? Do we earn our way on that? This is the first time I've ever really thought of it that way, right? Somebody needs to onboard into that missile to buy that house, to sell that house. I want it to be us. And the less emotional we are and the more factual we are, the more systematic we are, the more they begin to trust us, because they feel that our guidance system is going to get them where they want to be. Fascinating when you really dig into this stuff and think about it, right? That's why I like doing these podcasts. I learn something every time too. When I get new wirings, you can hear my neural pathway about this whole stuff really becoming firmer and firmer and more protected. It's just the way it works, right? So now, the last point here, I'll sum this up with, never get fooled into believing it's ever fixed. Think about what I said. Until you get to the goal, you're always tweaking. You're always fixing. And importantly, more importantly, if you can seek out the negative feedback instead of waiting for it, trying to anticipate it. Think about some of the greatest athletes in the world. I always think of Gretzky because I'm a hockey fan, right? Wayne Gretzky. I always tried to be where the puck was going to be, right? He always tried to go the spot where he thought the puck was going to end up. So he was seeking advanced movement in advance of this puck going all over the place. By the way, when he was beginning to learn hockey, he sat up in the stands a bunch of times as a kid, and he just took a pen and he stuck it on the paper, and he watched the game, and he just moved his pen to wherever the puck went. And it is an incredible mess of zigzags and crisscrosses and everything. So it's all over the place. So you begin to build this intuition that things are going to be chaotic. It's not going to all work in this exact formulaic way we'd love to think it is. It's going to be chaotic. So the more that we can make these quick and swift adjustments, we become more intuitive and we can anticipate them. Some of the best athletes in the world, like Gretzky, same technique. So don't ever get fooled into believing it's fixed. Always try to be where the challenge is going to be so that you can be the first one there to fix it and keep that missile moving in the direction of the goal. All right, let me go back and cover this slowly. You have to look for negative feedback as our subject today. And if you want to do the homework like I did, go read Maxwell Maltz's The New Psycho-Cybernetics. That's the version edited and updated by Dan Kennedy, and learn about his guided missile theory. Fascinating stuff. Next, measure your critiques, the critiques and negative feedback that come to you, against your system, not your emotional reaction. The third one here, seek out second and third opinions before just simply accepting critique and changing something. Have some rigorous debate and thought around that. That's the power of a mastermind or a good coach. I'm not patting myself on the back. I have my own challenges becoming a better coach. I'm saying seek it out. Mastermind, coaching, conversation. Beat it around first before you make that feedback change. I'm not saying forever, just quick, right? Quick, get some feedback. And never get fooled into thinking anything is ever fixed until the ultimate goal has been reached. Don't be naive, okay? All right, to chunk it up, the key point here is a business is an unforgiving, unfeeling mechanism that runs best when it's built on systems that provide constant and never-ending feedback that can be acted upon to ensure that business's profitable growth, okay? Hey, remember, you can take immediate action and get started in a better direction if you're already in the business, or the right direction if you're just getting started with our free simple business plan. I've got it sitting over there for you at freeagentgift.com. One of the most important things is to print out the infographic and stick it up somewhere so you understand generally in one simple sheet how this business really works and what it requires. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss out on any insights each time we upload an episode. We also broadcast our live sales training calls on Facebook and YouTube every Friday at 1 o'clock ET. So remember to turn on your page and channel notifications for the Realty Classroom so you don't miss the reminders, and join us over there. I'd love to get some commentary over there too. Feel free, if you watch a recording, to give me some commentary or questions. I will personally answer them. We also appreciate it if you would share our content with other entrepreneurial real estate agents just like you so that they get the help that they need as well. Hey, thanks for listening. And remember, thank you for being here, because nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on your own business. I'll see you in the next episode.